welcome everybody. And I'm just going to continue on this. It says we're recording. I think that's actually the next slide. But we're here for the road safety audit course this time. And so as I say, most of you have just completed safe system assessment training, and there's a bit of overlap between these, but not a huge amount. And they are different processes, but I'll certainly get into that. But I will just say, yes, that we are recording the session in case anybody misses a session, they can catch up. And also, if you want to go back and have a look, remember you're on mute and you can't turn your camera on at all. You can put your hand up and we can unmute you, but you won't be seen and recorded. I do put a little bit of a content warning. We do show some road crashes. We analyse some road crashes. So just flagging that with anybody that might disturb. They're not. It's not graphic. We don't see bodies or anything like that, but we do analyse crashes to try to understand what we can do to prevent them in the future, of course. I want to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the different lands on which we're running this training, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And it does look like we have a good spread across New Zealand again. So thank you all for logging in. Kathy, why don't you take us through the use of Zoom and what we're like. But for those who don't remember Kathy is our training manager at Safe System Solutions, and Kathy is your go-to person for anything about the management of the course, the use of the learning management system. If you're having tech difficulties, if you can't get your assignments in on time or anything like that, just get in contact with Kathy. She's always available. Over to you for the Zoom part.
Thank you, Ken. And yes, so just a reminder, you can chat at any time and ask questions through the chat function. And you've got a little drop-down box. You can chat to all panelists, which is Ken and myself, or you can change that to all panelists and attendees. And that means your message will spread to everyone in the group. So feel free to use that as you wish. Ken mentioned you can use the Q&A as well if you're having any trouble with the chat for any particular reason, or if you want to ask an anonymous question. And if you really want to hear your voice, then you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can ask a question or make a comment that way.
Thanks, Kathy. And if your tech fails, there are some phone numbers, and you should have the slides on a PDF available to you. So lots of backups. And of course, if worst comes to worst, you can always just catch up on the recording. Right, two main presenters for the course. Myself, I'm there, and I think I know all of you, so no introductions required. The other gentleman on the screen there, Jamie Robinson, probably a lot of you haven't met. Jamie's the technical lead at Safe System Solutions, and he'll be presenting some of the detailed design, road safety audit stuff in a couple of modules' time. All right, Kathy, back to you.
Thanks, Ken. Just a reminder that there is a tiny little lag on the screen, the slide switching over, but we are using Moodle this time around for our learning management system, and many of you have jumped in there and had a look around. So if you haven't yet, you're looking for an email from Safe System Solutions, and probably check your junk. Similar to last time, all the materials are in there. There'll be a quiz at the end of each session, and there'll be a couple of assignments, some bonus assignments this time around, and we kick off with one today, so we get you stuck straight into it. And again, as Ken mentioned, any dramas, just get in touch with me on that one.
Thank you, Kathy. So Moodle's your go-to place for everything. Make sure you're in there and familiar with it. And of course, Wally is back. Wally the Wombat is back again. So you'll remember you have to count the number of times you see Wally the Wombat warning sign appear throughout the sessions to make sure you're not doing emails on the side or designing a roundabout or something like that. Just to make sure you're keeping an eye on the slides and the content. So count the number of Wallies, and that'll be a question in the quiz. And your Wally count at the moment is 0. This is not one of your Wallies, but that's what they look like. Okay, again, like the Safe System Assessment course, we have some requirements in order to successfully complete the course. 4 out of the 5 live webinars, and view the one that you miss if you have to miss one. And a bit like last time, if just life takes over and you absolutely can't make it, another one, just talk to Kathy and she'll sort that out for you. Satisfactory completion of all the set tasks, and we have that 80% pass mark. And I remind you that we're here to make sure that you get that 80%, and we will provide you with one-on-one coaching. Happy to answer emails, have a phone chat, set up a one-on-one Zoom session with you, talk through elements if you're struggling at all in any of the assignments or quizzes. So really do take that on if you need it. It's actually been quite great to have a few one-on-one chats with some New Zealanders during the Safe System Assessment course. So pause there and just check if anybody has any questions about the running of the course, the logistics of it, see if anything's come in there in the chat. Anything yet, Kathy?
No, not at the moment, but it's a good reminder. Feel free to type in anything along the way. So don't wait until we stop for questions. Just type your questions or comments in at any time.
That's right. Okay, so road safety audits. Road safety audits have been around a lot longer than safe system assessments, and many of you have probably had different involvements with road safety audits, procuring them, maybe being involved in audit teams, or at least looking at or understanding the process of auditing. So the other thing was when Maria sort of said, we want to run this, and we said, that's a great idea. I think it's very good. My first question was, well, doesn't the Safe System Engineering course cover a couple of days on auditing? And I haven't actually been to the 5-day course, but that was my understanding, that it was the same as the course we run here on 5 days, which is 2 days worth of road safety audit material. And I was informed that no, it's much shorter section on road safety auditing within that course. So that was, I suppose, eye-opening to me, but that's it's good to know. And so that gives us the ability to delve into road safety audits a bit more. And the second thing in that conversation with Maria was when she sort of mentioned the people who would be coming. I said, okay, we got the best of the best in the first group. They're going to know a lot of this stuff, and we need to ensure everybody's on the same page as we go into the auditing. But she was very open to say that this group is probably going to pick up maybe some process things that they're not quite aware of or the like, but also that this group can provide feedback for the wider rollout of the road safety audit course across New Zealand. So that's what I'm going to be asking you to do, is note down any specifics within the course that you believe need to be massaged for the New Zealand context, anything you think is missing, anything maybe you disagree with, and just provide us that feedback so we can update the slides. Also, anything you like or you think is really important and resonated well, and we can either ensure that that's highlighted in future courses or maybe even expand on it. So so thank you in advance for that, and we'll be able to jump into it. But the reason I sort of say that is we have been running this course for many, many years in across Australia and in part of Southeast Asia. So we definitely adapt it to the local context we're in, but it's a fairly consistent theme of the principles of road safety auditing that we'll be running. But the key out of this course overall is to run through the process of road safety auditing. There's no possible way in these modules that we will be able to impart all the things as an auditor that you might need to know and find, and individual circumstances of road designs that you're looking at. It's just, we can't do that. And in fact, it's a career-long, lifelong learning exercise. You're picking up more things. You're relying on your existing experience and knowledge, and you researching and looking into areas that you might be concerned about. So this one's really a process. That being said, we certainly do highlight some specific characteristics of the road environment that present risk, and characteristics of designs that we see time and time again pop up in road safety audits. So we want to ensure you understand the basic process and have some basic skills in auditing. Now, I think with this group, you're all already up there with this, but it'll be maybe adding a few things here and there. Big change in road safety auditing that's sort of continuing to happen is further integration of safe system principles into road safety auditing. And this sort of brings safe system assessments and road safety audits closer together. And maybe somewhere in the future, we don't need both processes, but certainly at the moment, there is enough difference between the processes that they both have their place and can work well. We'll present different examples of road safety audit issues. Sometimes I use the existing road environment to demonstrate a point, although road safety audits in New Zealand specifically are all about designs, reviewing designs, plans, concepts, and trying to iron out any road safety issues before they are built. In most other jurisdictions, they will talk about existing conditions road safety audits. So that's the existing road environment, going out, having a look at it, identifying issues. That's not within the suite of things that is referred to as a road safety audit in New Zealand. So we want to ensure that all road users are considered in road safety audits: cyclists, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles, pedestrians, cars, scooter riders, the lot. And we do want to encourage road safety audit as one of the tools to inject road safety into our projects. And there are quite a number of tools these days, and they continue to sort of build and answer any of your questions about road safety auditing. There you go. There's Wally number 1. That's the last bit of help I give you. Okay, so the road safety audit process really follows the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6 and 6A, which are those two documents that should be coming up on your screen now, hopefully. And they set out the process for managing road safety audits, which is Part 6, and Part 6A is the implementation of road safety audits. And those documents are currently being updated. I'm acting as a technical advisor to Austroads on that update to consolidate those into one. And I'm going to give you some insights into some of the things that are coming in that future document, which should be released later this calendar year, hopefully, although Austroads board approval tends to be notoriously slow. But New Zealand has this document, which is a 2013 document, Road Safety Audit Procedures for Projects. There is a lot of similarity between these two. There are some differences. Some of the things that are New Zealand practices have been fed into the new updated Austroads Guide, and there are going to be some differences. And it'll be up to New Zealand to decide whether you adopt the new Part 6 when it comes out in its entirety, whether you create a new supplement that your own practices, which make mention of specific aspects that you want to do differently, and that'll be up to you. Those are the old Austroads guides, which you may recognise. Now, in the new Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6, there is this diagram. Now, I'm not going to go through it in full detail because there's a lot there. But what it does is tries to capture some of those tools that we use to inject safety into projects or into the road network in the sense of safety vision, proactive techniques, predictive techniques, and reactive techniques. And so if you take the life cycle of a road up here, we see there the sort of network strategic planning, corridor planning, business cases. Then you're into some sort of project. Then that's been built, and then you're dealing with an existing asset that you're managing and operating and maintaining. So green is sort of the safe system principles, that vision, it's high level, it overarches the lot. Proactive techniques, network safety reviews, and road safety audits fit into this, what are called proactive review techniques. Road safety check and quality assurance, sort of the internal processes, fit in there as well. They've categorized predictive techniques as things like ANRAM, OSRAP, IRR, these predictive tools to identify risk on the road network. They put safe system assessment framework into it here, and there was a bit of debate on that, and I'd be interested in anybody's thoughts on whether that's the right spot for it as a sort of predictive technique, or whether it maybe sits better as a proactive technique as well, that you're all quite familiar with safe system assessments now. And then reactive, of course, is chasing the crashes and the crash clusters. So looking at treatment of crash locations, black spots, looking at crash trends and the like. And they've also put post-implementation review of any project within that sort of reactive. It's been built and then we'll react to any incidents or any issues that have been identified. So audits there. You'll notice here that in this diagram, they have the existing conditions one, so we're not covering that in New Zealand. That is termed something else. And I forget exactly what you would term that if you were out to inspect an existing road for road safety issues in New Zealand. The term is escaping me, so prize for the first person to put that into the chat. Okay, so the first thing that I want to bring up here sort of captures of different components. So common road safety audit misunderstanding. And I'm going to do this straight off the bat. That people often think that a road safety audit is a check against the standards. And the term audit almost drags you into that thinking, but it's certainly not. And the reason for that is that we know that following all the standards doesn't necessarily give us safe outcomes. Okay, it's a great starting point, and standards and guidelines are often built with safety in mind, but either the safety hasn't been the priority in the development of that standard, or the way the standards combine together can give unsafe outcomes. So road safety audit is not a review of standards, but you may, as part of that, be thinking about, does it meet standards and are there safety issues that come out of that? So there's probably a lot more thinking about standards and the like within a road safety audit than a safe system assessment, but nonetheless, you can absolutely identify issues that meet standards that you believe are safe, are safety issues, or vice versa. It may not meet standards, but you don't bring it up as an auditor because you believe it is a safe outcome. Now, Kathy, I'll just check if you're able to still hear me.
Yeah, you're all good.
Yeah, good. I just had a thought that the internet may have dropped out on me. Okay, let's have a look at this tragic incident where we've had a loss of life to the truck driver on a very new road, a new toll road in Melbourne, actually. At the time that the incident occurred, it was new. A very high standard of road, if you call it that. A lot of huge amount of money spent on the road, and fairly new into its operation. We had somebody killed, and that sort of, if you step back and look at that, you think, how can that happen? That we spend, whatever it was, $5 billion building this new toll road, and then somebody's killed on it. You question a lot of things. If you were to build a new rail line, for example, and there was a death that quickly, there'd be some some serious, some really serious questions asked about a whole lot of things and probably some major changes. The thing is that this truck has breached the barrier and there struck the sign gantry and we've had a death. So the question I suppose I pose, and here's one for a chance to win a prize, and you can guess until somebody gets it right. If this barrier, say, was a test level 4 road safety barrier, wire rope system, test level 4, and we'll go under the 350 test protocol, or MASH. I'll take whichever one you want. What weight of truck is it expected to contain? Is my question. So I have some guesses. So, what weight of truck would that barrier be expected to contain? Okay, lots of coming in. I'm going to give it to Mark there. So Mark's gone in with the 8-ton, which is the NCHRP 350 old test standard, which that would have been tested under that time. It's gone from 8 tons now to 10 tons, but that's the test level 4, which is pretty much our common, roadside barrier that we would use, either the 10 or the test level 3, which is down around the 2.2 tons for the large pickup truck, the pickup truck. So prize to Mark, and the thing is to then sort of understand, well, this met all the standards of the time, but it would have taken somebody to sort of think, well, we've got a lot of heavy vehicles going to use this route, and that barrier, while it is a fantastic thing to have there, is it strong enough at these points to contain that vehicle, or are we happy to make decisions that it's not strong enough, but the result of it not being a high enough containment level aren't, the risks are better to not have that, or the like. But in this situation, I'm very concerned for this type of incident, but I'm also concerned about this secondary incident possibility, which is where we have a structure that extends over the road with potential multiple deaths and serious injuries if that was to come down on the road. And so these are the kind of things I think that a road safety auditor is sort of looking at holistically, questioning, the standards, saying, are the assumptions behind those standards right? Are there particular factors in this road environment that are different? And potentially making recommendations to either use a higher containment barrier in this section, provide a different type of signage structure, move the signage structure somewhere else, lots of things to think through. And so this is the MASH test vehicle 10-ton. That's really what it's those barriers, if they're a test level 4, are designed to be able to withstand or to contain at 100 kilometers an hour, 25-degree angle hit, if I remember correctly. So we need to understand the limitations of what we've got and the context in which we're running them. Before I get you involved in a few other little questions and little polls and the like, I do want to run through another sort of classic example of road safety audit issue that would pop up. That last one, there's lots and lots of stuff associated with road safety barriers if you're doing a barrier job, and many of you will know that there's so many technical elements to road safety barriers, and auditors do delve into that a bit more than you would potentially with a safe system assessment, where you're looking more at a little bit higher level at everything. But let's have a look at this one, which is, I would say, is a classic road safety audit finding. And we've got a design here for a new bit of road. It's a sort of brownfield site. There's existing road there. There's a big new development coming in here, a massive new development. there's some upgrades to this existing intersection, and it's all sort of linking together. And here's the access to the new huge subdivision, and then it links up to this new intersection up here. And so what we've got here is a through lane where the red car is, and you'll see that a vehicle traveling along there, imagine you're traveling along there, it's a 60 km/h speed limit. So let's say you're traveling at 62 or 63, and you come along here, and all of a sudden you found yourself in a dedicated right turn lane. And the term we use for this, and many of you know the term quite well, is a trap lane. I sometimes just marvel at people's ability to name some of these things. Trap lane. It is just such a great name to explain exactly what happens. You are trapped. You driving along, you find yourself trapped, and maneuvers need to be made. And we know if you have a trap lane that in this area, as a driver approaches that trap lane, we know that they are going to make high-risk maneuvers to get out of their lane. Obviously, they don't want to, stop. And we know that there is an increase in turbulence and an increase in crashes. A lot of the crashes are side swipe rear end crashes, which we know can happen at higher speeds. But motorcyclists involved in this. Sometimes in scenarios, there's cyclists, cycle lanes in the vicinity, and we can see some pretty bad outcomes as well. And again, as a road safety auditor, we're sort of constantly seeing these sorts of things. Now, there's often great reasons from a project perspective why these things have been put in place. And it often involves the inability to acquire land or some sort of feature that's stopped the ability to fit in what you need. And the project team sort of puts it in there, considering all the factors of their project, all those many things when you've got a major project like this that you're trying to work through: budgets, environmental, land acquisition, services, traffic flow. You're working through all of this, and safety is a component of that. But our role as road safety auditors is to come in with that specific road safety lens, to look at this, to identify it, and to try to provide measures to either eliminate that risk or significantly reduce the magnitude of that risk. So let's do a little exercise now, and I'm going to play a video, and hopefully it streams well for you. It might stream a little bit slow, but it's of a crash. And I'm going to be asking you to identify characteristics of the road environment that you believe may have contributed to this crash. Okay. So we're seeing the rear dash cam to start with when it comes up for you. And then it jumps to the forward. Now it'll play twice for you. Now, Kathy, hopefully that streamed through for you. Let me know if it streamed through.
It was all good.
Okay. Well, I might just jump to a few still photos of it. Okay, so this is the approach to the intersection. You can see the vehicle there just going through that give way line. I'll move forward a little bit, and the crash is occurring there. And then the vehicle strikes the pole there. Okay, so let's jump back a bit, and I'll pause at this photo, and I'll remind you there, what I'm asking is, what factors contributed to that crash occurring? Okay, so really what I'm asking you is, what factors influence the likelihood of that crash? Anything in the road environment we're talking about. We're not talking about any driver behavior issues or vehicle issues. We're just talking about the road and roadside. What could have contributed to the likelihood of that crash? So just type it in there, and we'll see what people think. So I'd like to do a little bit of this sort of analysis of crashes to see what we can learn about the infrastructure. So I'll give you a second to do that. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Like always, the New Zealanders are just wonderful at popping in comments, getting involved here, and really thoughtful things coming through. Okay. So we're seeing some people talking about insufficient line marking, warning of the intersection ahead. A few people have picked up here the masking of the give way sign with the shared path sign. So that's an interesting sort of very specific potential issue there with that sign clutter, as you could call it. So these are, both things that, all things here that could lessen the chance that somebody identifies they have this intersection they have to give way at, and to appropriately give way. So lighting was pointed out that there, during the daytime we're seeing it now, but you would want to go there in the night and see how it looks at night from a lighting perspective. So Andy there's popped in, T intersection not conspicuous enough. And I think that's an interesting point, and it fits in nicely with one that I'm hoping I see as I flick through all of these other ones.
Ken, we've got some comments saying lighting columns look as if the road continues through the junction.
Oh, that's what I'm looking for. Who said that?
So there's quite a few people are on this tangent. It looks like a through road. Power lines make it look like the road continues straight. Line of power poles. Nothing really breaks up the see-through. Is it a T? Looks like a roundabout. Interesting comment. So yeah, there's quite a few people.
Wow. Is this going to be an Oprah? Everybody gets a prize?
Everybody gets a prize.
Anybody who's sort of gone onto that theme, I do want to initially give a prize. That for me, that is a really, everything that I was reading there, and I was sort of trying to read through a lot. Everything there are great things to be looking at, to be identifying. This idea of what I would term visual deceit in the road environment, where the road may deceive a driver into believing the characteristics, the geometry, or the like is different to what it actually is laid out. And for me, some of the big contributing factors, and working with my human factors people that are really influential on that are things like runs of power poles or runs of trees or lights that continue on in a run are very influential in a very subconscious way to a driver believing that their road continues on with priority. And so this one we've seen sort of the power poles off into the distance continuing on, the lighting columns continue on, and so there's quite a see-through effect. Now we've got, a little bit of a chevron there, and it's a good point that somebody made about, is it a roundabout? Is it a T intersection? What is it? Again, there's some confusion potentially there, and maybe you can rectify some of that with warning signs and directional signs on the approach. But that see-through effect is one thing that I really, I suppose, want to highlight, that an auditor should be thinking like that. What would somebody who doesn't know the intersection, doesn't know what's coming up, is new to it all, maybe he's half asleep, had a few beers, whatever it is, and they're approaching this intersection, and what could they be confused by? What could they be deceived by? What could they possibly think the geometry of this intersection does? And sometimes it's quite hard to pull yourself into that mindset. But have a think about that see-through effect.
And there's just a comment from Kevin saying there's been 10 deaths in 3 crashes in rural Canterbury due to see-through effect.
Okay, so it sounds like this is something that you're all quite aware of, and we do need to really be conscious of it. The road safety auditing process is great in terms of trying to iron this out before they are built, and we do see see-through effects being built in quite a number of ways. Sometimes there's new intersections formed. Sometimes there's roads, subdivisions get added or new link roads. Sometimes it's an alteration of the geometry of the intersection. So perhaps changing the priority. This is a sort of classic here. If you've got a T road like this, for example, and the main arterial is this road, and the main arterial continues on this way, there's often that tendency to alter priority, which is fine, and maybe create that sort of road environment, but that goes like that, and then potentially to square up your intersection. And that's a good, that's a fine treatment to do. But what it often can leave us with is this see-through effect through this way, because you'll have your trees just making a run and a line that continue on like that. So really important, if you are seeing these sort of designs come through, is to think about, now I'm approaching from this way, what am I seeing? And then there are obvious, ways to fix this with, you just mound some of your spoil there to really block off that any see-through effect. Maybe thinking about where you start this, whether you make some alterations. So, just really thinking through that in those early stages. So thank you. I think a few prizes have just gone out the door there. But let's talk about now the severity of that crash. And I'm not going to spend as long on the severity of this crash, because I think a lot of you are very attuned to severity of crash and thinking through that now due to the force nature of that in the safe system assessment. But when that vehicle hits, there's the initial crash, and then we get this secondary crash where the vehicle hits that light pole, and it's a slip-based pole of some description. I tell you what, though, I've never seen a slip-based pole where the light head separates like that. I'd be interested if anybody else has. It's quite a fascinating one. Anyway, so the decision to utilize a frangible slip-based pole in this particular scenario, I think, has probably saved the life, if not a serious injury, of the black car driver there, who was sort of just going along, driving along, and then all of a sudden was involved in an incident. So that choice to use that means that it's got that extra deflection space there. And it's surprising how small a distance, if you can add that energy absorption or dissipation of energy over time, can change it from a fatality, high-level serious injury, into a walk-away event, which this one, if you watch a little bit of the footage after, you see that actually they get out there. So a road safety auditor also has to think about severity of crashes. We don't just stop at likelihood. We do the severity as well. So another example here where maybe a road safety auditor has been involved in this and made the recommendation to use a slip-based pole. So likelihood and severity, again, are key elements to thinking through the road safety audit process. So let's talk about slip-based poles then. I mean, a slip-based pole, which I'm sure, again, this group is very experienced in road safety engineering, so I'm probably telling you things you are very aware of, but a lot of people doing this course in the future are really new to the whole thing. And it's explaining what a slip-based pole is, the idea that it shears at the base, where it has the collar and the bolts to manage the wind loads from a torque perspective. So, torque perspective. And again, as a road safety auditor, you'd be looking at roadside installations of lighting usually, and saying, well, could this be made slip-based to lessen the severity of any crash? And they really do work in a wonderful way. And here's one from just down the road from some of you in near New Plymouth. I'd be interested if anybody remembers this incident, but driver obviously hitting a slip-based pole, and the pole going straight through the reassurance sign there, and no injuries. And that sort of thing amazes me. In one sense, that there's enough speed and energy to fling a pretty heavy damn light pole through a reassurance sign, yet nobody has had any major lasting injuries from it. So, shows the advantage of us using slip-based poles when we can. But as a road safety auditor, you've got more to do than just suggest slip-based poles everywhere. You have to sort of contextually think about this and understand how's that going to function if struck? What are some of the challenge with it? Are they using the right post, right pole for the right location? So let's have a look at this one here. And hypothetically, if it is actually the same location, it's not quite the same pole. But if this pole was to be, you were back here at the design stage, and you're seeing lots of lighting columns and poles in this big new major intersection upgrade. And if they were to say, we're going to make this a slip-based pole, as a road safety auditor, you'd be saying, well, that's good. They're trying to make it safe and friendly. But what issues may this arise that as a road safety auditor you might want to put into your report? Any ideas on that? Any possible? Okay. Yes, they're all coming in now. And I'll let Kathy work that out, because the flood of people talking about pedestrians and vulnerable road users is big there. And that's right. We're starting to now think about, okay, well, if this is struck, maybe even at lowish speeds, we're going to have a large hazard falling into areas where there's pedestrians, cyclists, and also overhead wires. Lots of overhead wires here. So as an auditor, you need to think through all of these things. Where is it? When it's struck, where's it going to go? Is it more dangerous to have it slip-based rather than to have it as a rigid, or even an impact-absorbing pole, which is this type of pole, which holds a more contained envelope when struck and is usually the preferred frangible light pole in a lower speed environment. And I mean, lower speed is generally seen as anything below 80 kilometers per hour is that general lower speed in a lot of your standards and guidelines. I mean, 80 is very fast, as many of you know, and there's a lot of energy in there, but generally. So higher speed slip-based poles usually, unless there's dangers to specific road users if they come down. Impact absorbing like this one, which sort of wraps around the vehicle, or rigid poles in these lower speed environments, or of course putting things behind road safety barrier systems. Jump in if there's any questions and keep them coming through. We will probably get you into a couple of questions to you shortly. And while I'm on slip-based poles, I mean, I've picked one little topic of the tens of thousands we could be talking about, and I'm sort of running it to show the level of sort of thinking around some of these, which you gain throughout your career in road safety, as many of you have already done. But one of the other challenges often with a slip-based pole is the height. This is a little more for existing roads, but I sort of point this out as something to think about anyway, maybe in a post-construction audit if you're doing that. But you want to make sure the height of the slip-based pole is appropriate. Too low, and it may not function with its the shearing that it should. A higher pole may mean that it snags the vehicle. And so we've got Max here, one of our road safety auditors, just checking that it's in the right height within the tolerance there, and you want that in the slip plane. Again, at a design level, you're probably not going to see any of this most likely, but you may in existing roads. So road safety audit is proactive. It is the proactive process. Black spot investigation. There it is. Crash reduction study, I think was the term I was looking for New Zealand. Is sort of the black spot investigation, crash reduction study, road safety sort of assessment, or whatever it is the reactive process. Now the question sort of comes: should you look at crash history as part of your road safety audit? And there is no specific advice. In fact, your New Zealand procedure for road safety audits does mention crash history as something that you could take into account more in the determination of your likelihood of crashes, but certainly it is identified. A lot of road safety auditors will say they don't like to look at crash history because this is a new facility being built. It's a design, it's a major alteration to the infrastructure. And the history of it is somewhat irrelevant, and it may cloud you thinking broadly about potential future issues. So I'm not going to sort of say you must look at the crash history or you must not look at the crash history. I'm going to leave that to you. If you think it's going to be valuable in you building a rounded picture of what's to come, then please do so. If you think it will help you risk rate things, please have a look at it. If you're worried about it clouding your judgment or the like, you can maybe put it to a side, or maybe look at it after you've done a bit of thinking about the project. That's often what I do. I'll with my audit team, we'll audit, we'll look at things, we'll come up with our comments. Then we'll have a look at the crash history and say, is there anything here that alters what we've come up with? And again, you've got to be a little bit careful you don't then go, well, there's actually been no run-off road crashes in the last 5 years or something, so maybe we remove that as an issue. If you still fundamentally believe that's a risk that hasn't yet presented in crashes, you should do that.
Ken, just a comment. It's good to look at the crash history of the wider area or corridor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that that's giving you again a holistic understanding of risks in the area. It may help with understanding different road users that are involved, maybe particular patterns of road use that present risk, and whether the design is catering for that overall. So yeah, good comment. I ran the road safety audit course for a long time with a colleague who was absolutely adamant that you never look at crash history, but I'm definitely not in that camp. So because road safety audits have been around so long, there have been quite a number of studies around the world of the effectiveness of road safety audits. And there's a couple that usually get bandied about when people are trying to show the benefit. One of them is a 36-to-1 benefit cost ratio for a design stage road safety audit. And really that's trying to, correlate back to say, if this had been built as it was designed, it would have caused this many crashes. If it's the audit was done and it rectified this or reduced the risk down to this, and it cost X amount to make those changes, in terms of, the design work, but also, any difference in infrastructure cost. So it's pretty huge for going through the process of road safety audit. Not as much for the existing roads, which, as I say, that's not you don't do those in New Zealand, but at a 6-to-1 because you've got the existing infrastructure there, and it's, it's often more expensive to alter that. Okay, definition of a road safety audit. I'm going to run through this for what the Austroads definition is, show you what the New Zealand one is. They're pretty much the same, but there's some slight differences. Austroads has come up with this lengthy, wordy definition of a road safety audit: a formal, robust technical assessment of road safety risk associated with road transport projects, completed by independent and qualified audit teams, completed by applying safe system principles and targeting those fatal and serious injury crashes, considers the safety of all road users, unless specified in the audit brief, which I'll come back to, actually that one is a potential one to trip people up in the quiz that you're going to have at the end, because we do always say that you should consider every road user within a road safety audit. But there are some briefs which specify a particular road user, but you wouldn't, as a particular focal point, but you wouldn't ignore other road users. So when you get to that question, really do think, we got to think about every road user here. And can be conducted on proposed or existing roads. And again, this is one where New Zealand will say, no, that's another process. Then there's this sort of extra statement that's put into Austroads. Objective of a road safety audit is to identify foreseeable hazards for road users. It's a reasonable but not absolute hazard identification method for all road users, with a particular focus on the reduction in fatal and serious injury crashes. A road safety audit is not an opportunity to redesign the project without an apparent link to safety. So it's all about safety. And it's not a technical check against design standards. And that sort of stuff should be carried out as part of quality processes within any design house or design organisation. So it's formal. I'll highlight that. This is a formal process, and I'm going to take you through all the steps of it. It's not something that just happens, at lunchtime, or, you flick it over to a colleague and say, hey, can you audit these designs and have it back to me in a couple of hours? There's a process to go through. Done by independent and qualified teams, safe system principles, all road users, and proposed or existing roads. So the New Zealand sort of definition seems to, say it with far less words than Austroads. Maybe Austroads just likes to elaborate on things a little bit much there. Independent review of a future road projects to identify anything that may affect road safety. The audit team considers the safety of all road users and qualitatively reports on road safety issues and opportunities to improve safety. It's intended to help deliver a safe road system and is not a review of compliance with standards. So a lot of familiar themes there, and I highlighted a few important words. And so the safe system is, I've mentioned it's more and more factoring into road safety audits and filtering in, and New Zealand's got a good sort of, or an interesting way of sort of forcing that out with the risk assessment methodology used, and we'll go into that. And this is sort of the part of this course where I remind people of what the safe system is, or I introduce them for the first time to the safe system. We do have a lot of people who come through this course who really aren't aware of the safe system. So I'll spend longer with a group, like a much greater group on that. But this group's just really already been through all this, so I don't need to run through all the principles and the elements that New Zealand's using under the new strategy and the framework of the safe system. But those human tolerance to physical force and the idea that people make mistakes are still critical into that. And again, here, I usually run through all of the different New Zealand principles that are being put forward. But yeah, really that highlighting the designing for human vulnerability as a really, I suppose, important one that people can forget in road safety auditing, and getting fixated on some of the likelihood ones, but we need to consider that as well. And we do utilise, again, the biomechanical tolerance forces of the human body, and referring back to our curves on speeds and crashes. And I know there's lots of work going on about recreating these, creating more contemporary versions of this with newer vehicles, with better data and information. The Austroads Guide and the New Zealand one still refer to these curves, and it's probably at this point we're going to pop up a little poll, and I've asked you one of these questions before within the poll, but I'm going to do it again because it's showing you what we would ask to a fresh group, but I'll ask it again, and it's my way of obviously talking about human tolerance to physical force. So the poll should have popped up on your screen, and yeah, let us know if anybody's having issues. So type into the Q&A or the chat if you can't see it. And it's probably a good time also to have a stretch, grab a glass of water. So we'll give you 3 minutes to quickly jot your answers in there into the poll, and yeah, have a stretch.
Thanks, Ken. And just a comment that came through during that last bit as well was about not just roads for road safety audits. So it can be footpaths, shared paths, cycleways, other things you can audit. Yes,
I do cover that later in the session, and whoever mentioned that is certainly on the ball there, because again, a little window into the quiz questions at the end of this module, that sort of thing might be asked. So very good, thank you.
No worries. I'll just pause the recording here and give everyone that 2-minute break.
Thank you. Right, let's have a quick look at that. I'm going to have to keep moving along because I have about 6 hours more worth of content to cover today, and I only have an hour left to do it. Okay, so road safety audit, check against standards. No, it's not, and well done, everybody. And you can audit your own design. Well, you can't audit your own design. It has to be that independent check, and most of you are onto that. So the formal elements of the SAFE system, and these I suppose are more across Australia these days. New Zealand's sort of drifting away from these pillars, these elements, but the idea being that safe attitude's not specifically one of the elements of the SAFE system. It's that's embedded within safe people, I suppose. And the idea of eliminating mistakes on the road is seen as unachievable. We've got humans in control of the systems. Humans make mistakes, so that's not specifically one of the things within the SAFE system. It's more minimise and manage mistakes rather than try to eliminate them as such. And Usain Bolt was 44 kilometres an hour, as most of you got, and that brings us back to, yes, the graphs on biomechanical tolerances to forces. And we see the pedestrian striking car graph here. And this is where, as you remember from the last course, we have Usain Bolt coming in there at around 44 kilometres per hour in the collision speed down the bottom here. And for the general population, we're seeing that level is about 60% chance of death if a car was to strike a pedestrian. So, maybe just as a bit of an analogy, there's slight physics issues with this, but, if Usain Bolt ran into a car at his maximum running speed, he would survive probably because he's the hulk of a human, but a general member of the public being struck by or striking a car at 60 kilometres there. At 44 kilometres per hour is about 60% chance of death under these curves. And here's our little video of the forces that the human body is able to withstand. Hopefully that's streaming for you, and certainly survivable forces. Certainly hurts, but goes on to recover to lead a normal, healthy life. So when we put speeds higher than the human body can handle into different crash forces, we are in trouble. And this is the side impact, right angle, bullet vehicle speed here, and again the head-on speed. And as I say, I would spend a lot more time running through this, talking about the biomechanical tolerances of the human body, what this means, where there's exponential kick-ups, that 30, 50, 70 being the critical speeds for these different crash types. Also talking about other crash types like side swipes, crashes with poles, and the fact that you can dissipate energy over time. You can really start to think about these as vectors and get some understanding of energy transfer to the human. The 10% line, still important in us, part of our thinking in road safety auditings when we're into the severity of crashes or the chance that the crash will be highly severe. That gives us a good starting point. And some more speeds and crash types to give us that general idea of the severity and the outcomes of crashes when they occur. Okay, the old model of road safety audits basically was to identify your issue, so look at the designs, identify the issue, put a risk rating to it, and make some recommendations. There's been a couple of new steps in recent years. The first one is to have a look at the biomechanical tolerances that we just looked at, make some commentary around that. And the next one's to categorize treatments into their effectiveness, really, with the way you do in a safe system assessment. Now, neither of these steps are specified in the New Zealand guidance at the moment. They are in the Austroads, and they'll be even further enhanced in the next one. So that might be an opportunity for New Zealand to maybe take on some of this. And those are some of the elements that pull road safety or new contemporary road safety audits closer to safe system assessments. So what I want to do is walk you through a road safety audit finding. And it's really about how you present the information to your client. So the project team, the designer said, this is what we're planning at this intersection. And you're the auditor, you're the audit, part of the audit team, and you're poring over the design, you're looking at it, and then you found something. How do you present that information? And so this is the upgrade of an intersection to install new traffic signals. You can see there, the green is the new, and the blue is the existing. And they're putting some signal pedestals, a jumma or juma, depending on how you pronounce it. In fact, I don't even know in New Zealand you would use that term, but if somebody can tell me what the acronym JUMA stands for, I'll give you a prize. We'll see if anybody comes in with that. But anyway, so you're the auditor, you're analysing that, you're looking through. Okay, Mark is onto it. Oh, it's just a race when there's many people who know the answer. It's who can type quickest. Kathy, I'll let you work that out. But I think Mark might have got in first, but might have been John just as close behind as well. It says joint use mast arm. That's where you put your signals and your lighting pole on the same pole. But anyway, let's have a look at this. And so you're auditing away. You go, oh, I'm a bit concerned with this bit here. Here we go. So I'm going, okay, it's a 2.9 metre wide right turn lane. That's now we're pretty narrow here for an arterial road here. It's going to cause some issues. So then you want to write up this audit finding. You found the issue. Now you've got to explain that. Right turn bay is too narrow. That is not going to provide your client with enough information. First, they'll be asking many questions. Which right turn bay? What's too narrow? Let's look at a fair example. Right turn bay from main road into side road is too narrow. The concern is it increases potential for side swipe or rear end crashes. Also, Austroad's got a road design sets the minimum traffic lane width of 3.3. Okay, we've got more information now. At least we know which right turn lane we're talking about, so that's good. And we're starting to think about the crashes that could occur. And in this case, linking it back to a standard, which is absolutely appropriate to do in a road safety audit, not a check against standards, but if you've got some standards and guidelines that back up what your concern is, you absolutely put that in. Okay, here's a really good audit finding. The first thing that you will immediately see, if it's on your screen now, is a snip of the design and an arrow pointing at exactly the spot we're interested in. Beautiful. Like, it's easy for everybody to know exactly what we're talking about. Right turn lane from main to side road is too narrow to adequately store right turning vehicles. Concern is vehicles will encroach into the same direction lane while either performing a turn, maneuver, or waiting in the bay. Especially if more than one vehicle is queuing in the bay, this will therefore increase the potential for sideswipe and rear end crashes, particularly under wet weather conditions or at night. The concern is likely to occur occasionally and is unlikely to cause fatal or serious injury. And then Austroad's guide specifies it should be at least 3.3 metres. So you can see that there's a good bit of information. And what I've done here, and this is sort of what I've learned in teaching road safety audit for so many years, is that we can sort of break this down into a formula or a recipe. Queenslanders love to call it a recipe after I showed it to them. I always called it a formula, but I'll let you do that in whichever way you want. Now, hopefully you're not colorblind, but I've changed the colors on this into 4 distinct elements. The first one is the issue. You're explaining this issue that you've identified. The yellow is the crash. You actually want to specify the crash that could happen. Now, if you can't actually think of a specific crash that could happen as a result of this, it's probably not a road safety audit issue. So you really want to, and that's a good test. Can I think of a crash that can happen if this is left as is and built as they've designed it? Then the blue here is any extra risk factors that, things that increase the risk or decrease the risk of that issue you've identified. And finally, in the purple at the bottom, standards and guidelines, if applicable. So this is where you will refer it back. A lot of road safety audit issues are, not meeting standards and guidelines. And they are, the auditor identifies it as a road safety concern. There's standards and guidelines to back it up. You put those two together and absolutely specify it. I just don't want anybody to feel that if the standards, if it meets a standard, then it's all good. You've got to critically question that. And likewise, if it doesn't meet a standard, it's not necessarily bad. But do put it in there if you can. So there's that was the little formula for writing up a road safety audit finding, and we will be asking you to do that in a kind of fun way at the end of next module or the module after. I'm not sure. But hopefully you've got your 3D goggles in your pack already, so that's going to be fun.
And
okay.
Just a quick question. Can I jump in with a quick question? You've got 45 minutes. Do you think a safe system assessment could now replace the existing road safety audit?
Yeah, yes, I do. I've never been a fan of existing conditions road safety audits um, ever, but especially now that we have a couple of things available to us. One being the Safe System Assessment Framework, which I far prefer, and the second being the wonderful tools available, um, such as IRR, infrastructure risk rating, and your ABLI crew there in New Zealand, just sort of churning that out for your network, or Kiwi Wrap, IRAP. There's just wonderful tools to identify risk on the road network without sort of leaving it to that particular luck of the draw of which auditor you get. But what I do think is that those tools of a great risk rating methodology and tool, combined with hand in hand with a safe system assessment, and ensuring assessors go through that documented, is going to give you a brilliant outcome. Road safety audits could often give brilliant findings and outcomes, but sometimes auditors have a tendency to get fixated on a few minor issues and sometimes not see the big picture the same way a safe system assessment just forces you to. Oh, so I'm just reading there. I didn't even. Carl's in the audience there. G'day, Carl. Good to see you. Risk. Okay. Prize coming out. Give me the traditional definition of risk. Now, some of you are going to probably define it the way we have been in safe system assessments. But risk is, James is onto it. Risk is likelihood times consequence, or frequency times severity. The chance it's going to happen and how bad is it going to be when it does happen. Now, this is used then for us to identify risk in the in the road safety audit, and you give a risk rating to any issue that you identify. And so what we see here is the risk matrix out of the New Zealand guidance. Now, this is a beauty. Like I don't think I've seen people anywhere else in the world do it quite like this. And there's elements I really like about this. But what you've got here is you've got standard frequency of crash up the top here. Okay, so is it frequent, common, occasional, infrequent that the crash will occur? The common way to do a risk matrix would then be to say, what's the severity of that crash going to be in terms of catastrophic, severe, minor, property damage only, or whatever it is. But New Zealand's sort of done this tweak on this and utilised then likelihood again. So the likelihood of death and serious injury. So basically saying that we're focused on death and serious injury because that's what the safe system is all about eliminating. So what's the chance that this crash is going to get up to that level? And this is one that it kind of keeps me up at night pondering. Can you do likelihood times likelihood, or are you negating, are you double counting likelihood here? And yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with it in the way it sits, but it is a real head scratcher. I'll show you what we're doing. We're doing in the new Austroads guide, which kind of takes this into account. Anyway, but what you've got there is very unlikely, unlikely, likely, or very likely that when this crash occurs, it's going to result in death or serious injury. And then you find those two together, you go, okay, well, occasionally this crash is going to happen and it's likely to result in death or serious injury. So I'm going to go with a moderate risk. Now, what on earth would you say is frequent, common, occasional, or infrequent? And how are we going to define what likely is and unlikely? Now, this is where the New Zealand guidance will talk about you can utilise crash history to help inform your decisions on where it's going to sit within this risk rating. The frequency includes exposure. So you know how we're saying in safe system assessments, we always go exposure times likelihood times severity. That is packed in already into frequency. Okay? So frequency or likelihood is exposure and the chance. So it's all packed in together. The severity is the severity. So Ostrodes does things slightly differently, but there's some clues that are going to help you in determining where you sit on this risk matrix for a particular issue. On page 27 of the Guide to Road Safety Part 6A, right, there's the frequency, and it talks about frequent, probable, occasional, improbable, so slightly different to the way New Zealand's termed it. And then they talk about frequent being once or more per week, that crash is likely to happen as a result of this specific issue, all the way up to improbably less often than once every 10 years. Ostrodes then has different levels of severity, which New Zealand doesn't use. But in your guidance, it does talk about frequent being at least one per year. So that's far, I suppose, less frequent than the Ostrodes definition, and once per 10 years being infrequent. Now, you don't get any more guidance than that in yours. So what this is really going to mean as road safety auditors in New Zealand is you're going to have to make some judgment calls based really on these figures, maybe factoring a little bit of what Ostrodes is saying. I'll pause there because I'm sort of throwing out quite a few interesting elements there. So frequency and severity are not always known for sure. So there'll always be a likelihood of either, hence the New Zealand scale. Yes, I think that's part of the beauty of it there. Yeah, and there's quite a scale in the Ostrodes one, as Kevin's rightly pointed out, between these markers. So it's really going to take a little bit of judgment, and you do start to think about sort of end risk score as a really important way of doing it. But what I do find is across the board, road safety auditors, people new to road safety auditing, they over risk rate. It's always higher than people who have sort of been doing it for a while. This group might be different because you're all sort of in the space and you have a bit more understanding of that. But when you see maybe let's talk about that. You know, there was that shared pass sign that blocked the give way sign. Right? Once you see that as an issue, then you can you have these visions of how it plays out to a severe crash. The reality is that if you went back to that site, they built it, you know, maybe you saw that on the design, they built it exactly what it was, as it was. Over a 10-year period, would you really expect that that specific thing contributed to a fatal serious injury crash, and that was sort of the key element to it? And I often work backwards and I go, well, what if I came here in 5 years' time? How many crashes am I expected to see based on that specific issue, or because of this specific thing? And it helps me sort of calibrate my risk rating. I do like the way this has been presented, but it does get me to start thinking about, well, what's likely, what's unlikely in terms of those death and serious injury. And I'm going to put something forward here, and I'm keen for feedback for this and whether this is stuff that people in New Zealand do. But if we go back to our crash biomechanical tolerances, can we say that crashes occurring in this region would fit into our very unlikely to result in death and serious injury. And this one likely, hopefully these are coming up on your screen. Sorry, this one unlikely, this one likely, and this one very likely. So when you've identified the crash and the chance that it'll happen, you're going back to some biomechanical tolerances and then saying, well, we know the speeds and the angles and the crash type fit into these bands, and this helps us a little bit in terms of the likelihood of death and serious injury. So as I say, this is not specific guidance in the New Zealand guidance. It's just me sort of writing how I would go about this. I have done this in a road safety audit in New Zealand at one point where we were just correlating it back to this as a means. So it's probably one I'd be interested in feedback from people on. This is what's not yet in use from Austroads, but this is one I developed with the project team, and we nutted this out for a while. And it does sort of take into account some of that New Zealand thinking, but it also is more sort of conforms with the international standard on risk. And it sees that 5x5 matrix, which a lot of people are comfortable with in risk rating. So what we've got over here is likelihood, which includes exposure, and it specifies that. And we've got severity, of course, up here. And what we then see is we've got sort of insignificant, minor, moderate, fatal, serious, some actual definitions of how you think about that. Admitted to hospital being serious, death within 30 days being fatal. And then down here, we've got the likely, probable, unlikely, rare, timing definitions on that, which are recalibrated to hopefully, exactly as the comment was before, to be more sort of graduated rather than these big jumps. And frankly, the current Austroads guide has a missing section in there if anybody analyzes it in detail. And then this sort of line here, which is saying, really, these are our safe system tolerance. These are the ones we're most interested in. We pop an FSI, fatal serious injury. I think New Zealand would probably use as KSI, killed seriously injured, but next to them just saying, this risk is there. The reason that's kind of important is because you can arrive at high risk down here, and you can arrive at high risk, here. Now, this one is the one that is to the right side of the crash forces, we're far more concerned about in a safe system outcome perspective than the minor crash with first aid. But it is an acknowledgement that that is still a high risk for, sort of lots of other injuries. So anyway, that's what's coming. It's generally been agreed, and it'll be up to New Zealand to decide whether you adopt this or you continue with the process that you've got running. Okay, Kathy, where are we at?
We're travelling well, Ken. I like this this sneak peek business you've got going on. That's good.
Yes. Put your credit card number in and you can get even more. Okay.
Some comments. Good for experienced auditors and smart clients, possibly a bit overwhelming for other clients.
A fair comment, I think, there. There's a big section in the new Austroads guide about capability development, graduation of auditors, entering in as trainee auditors, auditing for a while, and then getting different status of auditors to try to sort of accommodate this. But I do agree, there's a bit to it. There's a fair bit to it. There's actually this little star here is because it references to another table which gives more information about severity of crashes. So.
Yes, sorry, and another comment just saying I like the visibility of the harm admissions to hospital, which we don't seem to focus on in true safe system, i.e. post-crash care.
Yeah, good. And I think the other comment there is about clients receiving the report. And that is something that is becoming more and more of a challenge, I think, where we're seeing a lot of road authorities out there who have de-skilled, and the auditors providing, or safe system assessors even, or even independent designers and the like, providing these reports and these with some advice and trying to help your client understand those is really quite an exercise, and something that's going to be more and more important. We've got more and more responsibility to do that. So good point. But let's go back to this worked example we're working through. So you've identified your audit finding, and now you've risk rated. Okay, and you've said, okay, occasional, this is going to occur. It's going to be minor because it's side swipe, rear end, we're talking car to car, and so it pops out at a medium risk. Now you're going to risk rate it slightly different based on the New Zealand one, but you identify a level of risk. Of course, you're coming back to your tolerances to the human tolerance to physical force. Now, in a lot of the jurisdictions are now putting that alignment with safe system principles being sort of above or below the tolerable limits, being the 30 kilometre per hour for pedestrians, 50 for side impact, 70 for head on, and then a few others, and thinking about that. It's not again specified in the New Zealand table template or in the guidance, but what I will be sort of suggesting, and I've put a worked example into your memories ticket in Moodle, is that within your commentary, you should be sort of mentioning some of this to help, again, the client or the receiver of the report to understand a little bit about what we're thinking in terms of energy and tolerance. And then you do make some recommendations, and all jurisdictions in Australia and New Zealand do recommendations except the New South Wales. The New South Wales government has decided that nobody will be recommending to us what to do. We will decide what to do. Thank you very much. I think that again, I think will change shortly, because the auditors certainly are well placed to make recommendations, suggestions on what could be altered to improve the road safety outcomes. Now, that is not to say that whoever receives the report must do that, right? They can accept it or not accept it. And they just need to justify why they're doing that, they're doing something else, or they disagree. Okay? This is an advice. It's advice to a project team. It is not, there's no legislative power with any of this. It's an advice report. That being said, if you as a receiver of a road safety audit just go accept or reject, and you just go, no, not accepting that, and then don't put any information as to why, or that's probably going to leave you open to some issues down the track if incidents were to occur. But you are well within your right to write some commentary here, say don't accept that, and we're going to manage the risk in this way instead. Sure, it's your project. But yeah, you put a recommendation in. Now, again, this is where there's some categorization of recommendations that is now sort of integrated into a lot of road safety auditing, saying, well, there's primary and supporting. Again, this is getting us closer to a safe system assessment, because we talk a lot about those, primary or supporting. So this one is saying, consider measures to reallocate road space to allow for at least a 3.3 metre lane. Supporting. It doesn't eliminate the chance of a side swipe or a rear end crash at all. It lessens the chance of it. It's supporting. Maybe you could provide some alternate ideas if they can't achieve that, but that one's sort of just, that's what it is. And here's a reminder of those definitions of those categorizations. Primary treatment, road planning, design and management considerations that virtually eliminate the potential for fatal or serious injury occurring in association with the vehicle crash. And that supporting is road planning, design and management considerations that improve the overall level of safety, but are not expected to virtually eliminate the potential for fatal and serious injury crashes occurring. and they don't do anything to really negate any future primary treatments. The non-safe system is really in there just as a definition for you. You would not be recommending anything that is a non-safe system, makes things worse. So again, this is not New Zealand practice at the moment. I'm presenting it to show you, some of the evolution of road safety auditing, and it might be something that you're involved in making alterations, or you want to see this sort of stuff out of road safety audit reports. Okay, how are we going on time here? Okay, whip through a few more things.
Just a quick question. Is there a tolerance speed for rear ends, or is it similar to the head-on tolerance?
Yeah, people have generally used the head-on tolerance as the rear end tolerance, and it's sort of the Monash University Accident Research Centre XChemX model, the kinetic energy management model, used basically rear ends and head-ons as your sort of two ends of the spectrum in terms of all the angles of crashes that could happen, and they attributed those both. There has been more research coming out to show that rear ends have quite a bit of sort of serious injury risk at some lower speeds, and that we have under-acknowledged that with our biomechanical tolerances over time. So it's a bit of a watch this space. And there's some different research floating around. Sam Dookie from the Centre for Automotive Safety Research in Adelaide has some really good contemporary research around all these crash forces. But I suppose at the moment, a bit of rule of thumb, maybe that we get some updated Austroads guidance published and everybody agrees on it, we can move to that. But generally around that 60, 70 is probably where you're going to be thinking as that sort of tolerance. So I'm not going to go through this one in detail, but another just example of, well, this is a really common road safety audit finding, new intersection, dedicated left turn lane being planned, so in the purple, and the audit finding here is associated with dynamic visual obstruction or masking, where the vehicle waiting to turn right out has their vision masked by the left turner, and there's another vehicle travelling through. Now, this is a snip out of an audit report. You can see the diagram there. Pretty much tells the story, doesn't it? You don't need to read all those words. And I can't stress enough how important that is, that try and make it as clear as possible to describe this issue to the client, so then everybody can go forward. It's been identified as a risk rating, again, of medium, but you can see the medium has come around with a serious sort of outcome in your sort of Austroads traditional risk rating way of going about things. For New Zealand, it might be that the chance of a fatal serious injury is higher. Exceeds tolerable safe system thresholds because we're worried about a crash here where a vehicle comes out and is struck by a vehicle going through here, and the speeds of this intersection is 100 kilometres an hour. So we're immediately identifying this is not within our safe system tolerances, right? And so then the recommendation, and this one sort of has a few more things embedded in it. It certainly talks about a primary solution. It says, a roundabout would be wonderful here. But the auditors are somewhat sympathetic to the conditions here, being that there is no funding for a roundabout. They've barely scraped together funding to add these turn facilities. And so, you can make a recommendation of a roundabout, and it'll just be, no, we can't do that, right? But can we, eke out some more safety if they are going to run with this? And so, options here: increase the offset of the turn lane, relocate the hold line forward, provided it can be done safely. I mean, that's probably needs a bit more fleshing out. So I'll take questions in a second, but just for those who aren't familiar with this risk that I'm talking about, here's a little demonstration. So you're looking at the truck here. You can see the white car next to it, and it's 100 kilometers per hour. And you're in this car. You can see there you go. Oh, beauty. Okay, as soon as that white car has passed, I'm going to take my opportunity to get out, and silver car has been masked the whole time by the truck, and that vehicle goes out and potentially struck there. So that's the issue we're dealing with. Been doing some, this is a bit off topic, but doing some work recently of trying to get designs of larger separation in these points to open up sightlines and the like. Ideally, yeah, we're going to, big roundabout here is going to be obviously the greater aligned safe system outcome, but we're going to have a lot of scenarios where they're just not going to do that. And so what can we do to get the best possible outcome we can in the interim? Okay, questions there, Kathy?
I think there was a suggestion to remove the left turn lane.
Yes, that's an option. I mean, there is a safety benefit to the left turn lane in terms of reduced rear end crashes and the like, but you add this new dangerous one. But the rear end crashes are, as we talked about, traditionally less severe, especially if you've got forward momentum already for the vehicle you're rear ending. This is a very severe right angle crash, so that might be an option that is put forward.
Should you avoid saying if this cannot be achieved, and that should be up to the client?
Yes, that's it. Well, it's, I suppose this one is trying to say that is what would be best, but as I say, if you cannot achieve this, here are some options which are lesser, but does it just give an easy go to the client to go, wow, the roundabout, we'll just do the easiest, cheapest thing here? And I suppose that is a legitimate concern. This particular one, we really knew they were hamstrung in a whole lot of ways, and most auditors probably wouldn't have even put the roundabout there. They would have gone straight to these things, but we did want to reinforce that that is what really needs to sort of come here, but these are your other options.
There's a comment from James saying we don't accept this issue on new intersection and insist on achieving, and it's testing me, SISD from the limit line.
Yeah, safe intersection side distance from the limit line. That is great. So you would be able to back that up with some particular New Zealand standards and guidelines. Fortunately, a lot of jurisdictions aren't in that space. Little tip in the categorization of treatments: primary really has to either address the consequence of the crash or virtually eliminate the possibility. And virtually eliminate has to take into account general human error and failure. So we're really into that space of addressing the consequence, the severity. And it's very hard to do that without managing speed at conflict points. Just covering off a few things that a road safety audit is not. So it's not another name for just a site inspection or a design check. It's not another name for a black spot or crash reduction study. It's not a substitute for that. It's not an opportunity to fully redesign the project, especially where there's no link to safety. It's not a design review against standards. I can't say that enough. That may be part of it. This is an important one. It's not really a method for prioritizing or ranking project options. And that's sort of stated quite a few times in the Austroads Guide. And that's where a safe system assessment is far better. That is great for ranking and prioritizing. So if you're asked to, here's 3 designs, can you audit them, tell us, and rank them? You say, well, that's not the purpose of the road safety audit. We will identify issues with each and give you recommendations on how to alter them. It's not a safe system assessment. It's not a safety and design check, which is more about the construction, constructability, the maintenance, the maintainability, the decommissioning, and all of that of whatever the new asset is. So road safety auditors are really problem finders, and that is your primary role is to find issues. Helping solve those issues is just a bonus you give to your client. It's really there. It's up to them to resolve these. Your job is to find them, but convention is to actually provide those recommendations, as I say, except for in New South Wales. And I've shown this diagram before, but really we've got design reviews, and there is design review stuff you do in a road safety audit. They overlap, but they're doing stuff out here. They're looking at maybe drainage particulars, or maybe property overhangs, or different things that may not have actual road safety specifics, but they're important design things. The audit and the safe system assessment, as we talked about, does quite a bit of this stuff, depending on which stage. In here is a little bit more of that detailed stuff we've been talking about. Safety and design, again, it's its own beast, predominantly. And I suppose there's also what I usually do here, DDA, Disability Discrimination Act. Is it accessible to all road users of all abilities? Another important check, but not often roads. There's a little bit of that you might identify in a road safety audit, but yeah, it's not often produced. So the question is, what can be audited? Well, pretty much anything. Off-road shared paths is in there, you can see. The only one I've put a cross next to, which Austroads would say you can, is an existing road, because in New Zealand you don't do that for existing roads. But anything that interacts with the road environment, big projects, small projects. I'm not going to take you through this work example, but it is really important, and it shows that even the sealing of a road like this. So it's just the formalisation of an unsealed road joining this road. Didn't get a road safety audit because it was seen as we're just meeting all the standards and everything's good. We're just improving the situation, and then just a spike in intersection death and serious injury because of the creation of that see-through effect there. So this is the new section, which really lovely bit of road, but from the other end it just created this now straight line of sealed, and it just the see-through crashes just went off the charts. So the audit could have really helped there. So types of audits, there are the different types of audits. We've got concept, preliminary design, detailed design, post-opening, post-construction audits. I've put this sort of grey in roadworks because I'm interested in feedback, and we're going to have somebody talk a little bit. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's done in some other jurisdictions. I'm not sure what New Zealand does in terms of checking complex roadwork schemes and doing road safety audits on them, but it certainly can add value on those particular audits. The feasibility concept stage road safety audit, this is the one that I tend to say, do a safe system assessment instead, right? You're going to get better outcomes. But nonetheless, the feasibility one is big picture, big new bypass, and thinking about, intersection form, alignment, what's the land uses, how are people going to get from this subdivision over to the shops down here or whatever it is, are they going through the same big picture stuff. Preliminary design stage audits, you're getting now into you're getting some more detail. It might be on an aerial base, it might be on a survey base, and you're getting some idea of what's happening, and you're trying to identify issues associated with that. The detailed design stage road safety audits this is the big one, and this is where I do really think road safety audits are the right tool. So safe system assessment at this stage often is not just not the right tool to use. Road safety audit's great here, and you get into the nitty gritty. You get the long sections, you get the cross sections, you get the the full works, the drainage plans, the paper plans, the lighting, signage, and you've got to go through each of these. And you're going through sometimes 400 pages of A3s and looking through everything and trying to pick issues, and trying to understand if they build it exactly as they've designed it here, what is going to be some of the issues. They take a long time, design road safety audits. And if you're not somebody who spends their life with these sorts of look at things or doesn't have a huge amount of experience with this, you just make sure you're part of a team that has people. Doesn't mean you won't add value to the audit. You need to have people who understand these detailed design documents. You're picking up very intricate things. The use of drivable culvert end walls, for example. I mean, it's pretty easy for an auditor to pick up like a wing wall that is going to be unprotected like this, but to be able to sort of clarify the difference between different types, the one that is designed for being struck parallel to the road, or the one that's the drain is running parallel to the road as opposed to the drain is running across the road, perpendicular to the road. They're different types of drivable culvert end walls, and ensuring that they're getting the right type in the right spot is important. When they get out there to construct, they're sort of just going to build what the plan says, and they may not understand the sort of refined difference between these two. But as a safety outcome, if you're popping a type 1 there in this scenario, you're really not going to serve that purpose. It may work, but there's a danger there. And they're the type 1s and the type 2s. I talked about that construction stage road safety audit, and this is something that I don't do too many of these, but they are very important for these very complex, large traffic management construction site schemes to ensure that we're thinking broadly. These are ones where people get very fixated only on standards and guidelines. Is it the right sign in the right location with the right taper? Important stuff. But who's doing the holistic thinking about, well, now we're blocking off the access to the KFC. How are people going to get to that KFC? And are you going to drive into dangerous areas, make dangerous U-turns because they need their chicken? And what's going to happen? Have we thought about pedestrians? Can they walk safely through here? Cyclists, motorcyclists, it's a holistic check. I don't think that a full-blown road safety audit is required on minor traffic management schemes. I mean, that's picked up by the surveillance officer, the engineer, or the like. The major schemes, though, they do really need some dedicated thinking around this. Pre-opening audit is basically just before the ribbon's cut on a big new project, and just a check that everything was installed right. There's no new issues that have occurred, things that weren't foreseen in the design. Checking things like raised reflective pavement markers. Did they use the right colours? The guideposts the right way around? Have they got the overlap on the barriers correct? Did they put the end terminal in right? Is the barrier at the right height? Real installation style checks, which a surveillance officer or project manager is probably going to have done a lot of this anyway, but you're that, as an auditor, that final set of eyes. Post-opening, pre-opening, so post-opening is often when it's live to traffic because it's been a brownfields project, so it's kind of almost live to traffic most of the time anyway. You're out there in the very early stages. The quick prize for somebody can see in this post-opening audit what you might point out as an issue. The things, so fairly new bit of road opened up there. Let's see if anybody's got anything there. Oh yeah, all coming in now. Who is Grand Jan, I think, is the quickest there. So that is, yes, we've got a right turn available and a straight available here, which is going to be a forced conflict. This is obviously been just, the stencil's been put down the wrong way. And so it flipped that over. These are the kind of things you want to pick up as the post-opening road safety audit to ensure that everything got put in right. There weren't any last-minute stuff ups like this. And a colleague of mine, held the opening of Eastlink in Victoria, the 5 billion, whatever, huge project, because they'd basically done this on the exit, double lane exit, and they put a straight and a straight left as well, and they'd line marked it like that, and of course, this one should have been just a dedicated left, but yeah, so the minister was not allowed to cut ribbon. Oh well, that was the advice. This is going to be very bad if you open the road like this. Never seen a line marking crew work that quickly, was the comment from my colleague. There are these things called thematic road safety audits that are mentioned, and this is where you take a particular lens. So it could be motorcycle road safety audit, it could be a walking pedestrian audit, could be a cyclist audit. Now, what you're doing is you're putting that particular lens on. You need a rider, or you need to ride the route, you walk the route, you cycle the route. You really think about it from that road user's perspective. I do like to say that you should consider everybody, even when you're doing these, all road users, but these are really just honed in on, focused on that. But if you happen to be asked in a quiz whether you consider all road users, you consider all road users in road safety audits. Okay, I rushed a bit there, but I need to give you time to know what your assignment is. Kathy.
Thank you, Ken. Well done. So you are going to be given a topic at random, and you are asked to produce something creative, a short video, a fact sheet, a cartoon about that particular topic, and relate it back to road safety. And we don't just ask you to do that, we ask our own staff to do it. So one of our engineers has actually done a short little video as an example for you in the system. So what I'll do is I'll take over now. Is that all right, Ken?
Yeah, and I'll just say, as you're doing that, we're going to give prizes to the most creative, the most technically sound, and the most engaging next week. But the reason we're doing this is that there's just so many topics out there we'd love to talk about, and so we've picked a random selection of interesting road safety topics, and we're asking you to do a little bit of research on it. You might know a lot about it already, and just come up with a creative way or an interesting way to present that. Just could be a fact sheet. It could be you just get your phone and you just talk to it, talk to the topic. Film yourself, maybe draw a cartoon, whatever you want, but just a little bit of info there. Now we've got the random topic generator going here, and when Kathy stops it, that's going to be it, and that's going to be your topic.
You have to say stop, Ken.
Oh, stop. Okay, so there we go. Now, Kathy, make sure you take a snip of that or something so we don't lose it. But preparing for site visit, active events, warning signs, dynamic visual obstruction. Oh, Daryl's lucky there. We've already covered a little bit of that. Self-explaining roads, slip lane stand-up angles. Carl, you'll be all over that one. Graham, overtaking lane. Now, I'm not going to go through them all, but they're all interesting, fascinating topics. And we are going to share these with everybody so people can have an entertaining sort of insight into this. So think about how you're going to present some key information, relate it back to road safety, relate it back to, as an auditor, what you might be looking for, and upload it to Moodle.
Yes,
in that section.
Mm-hmm. So you can create anything that you like, and yeah, you can jump in there and have a look at the video that was created before. But as Ken said, we will share them with everyone. So the idea is that you learn from each other, and we don't want you to spend too long on this. Some people can spend days researching it. So if you do get stuck, do get in touch with us. I will put up the list. So if you didn't quite grab what your topic was, I will pop that up in here in a moment, just after we finish the session. So that'll be in this section here, which is in the module 1 part of the course. So just in here, that's where the quiz is as well. and that's where I'll put the recording of this webinar at the end of this session.
So you really should be able to, you can do this in 10 minutes if you want, just get do a little fact sheet, maybe Googling, grab a few things, pop a fact sheet together. That will pass, you'll get past easily there, you'll do very well. If you want to go a bit more creative, a bit more elaborate, and spend a bit more time on, then you're probably in the chance of prize territory there as well. And you might have a bit of fun getting that together. So I think we've pretty much done it, and we've done it with a minute to spare there, Kathy, but we'll see if any final questions. Of course, a little bit of trivia. If you log in early on Friday, there's a chance to win prize before the session even begins. So 3 minutes before the session begins, we will ask some trivia. We're going to have to think of new trivia questions for this group, Kathy, but one question has come in. When is that assignment due?
Oh, yeah, good question. The assignment is due, wait for it, Wednesday the 28th of July. No, that's probably too generous.
Well, next week in the session.
How about next Tuesday? Next Tuesday the 20th.
Yeah, because that's when the prizes will be announced. So if you haven't got your entry in by then, you won't be a chance to win a prize. But the other thing is, it will have to be completed before the end of the course to get the certificate and everything anyway. So, yeah, I'd knock it off. It shouldn't take you too long. There's information available out there on all those topics. And of course, contact us if you're stuck. If you go, oh, I don't know what this thing is, I can't find any info on it. Shoot us an email. We'll point you in the right direction.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone. We will see you again on Friday. Yeah. All right. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.